Mark Rogers TV talking Alabama football. We've got Gary Harris on the line from WVUA in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Gary, I know that you are running around like a crazy man right now with probably high school football playoffs as well and the basketball season in play as well. So I appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, good to be with you as always. And actually, we wrapped up our high school season last weekend, Mark, and I did the 2A, 4A, and 6A state championship games for television. Last Friday, they had the 1A, 3A, 5A on Thursday, and they had the 7A on Wednesday. So we wrapped up last weekend, but I'm going actually to Montgomery tomorrow for the Raycom Camellia Bowl between Georgia Southern and Eastern Michigan. Then Monday night, I'm doing the call for television for the Alabama-Mississippi High School All-Star game there in Montgomery at the Crampton Bowl. So I'm going to make a weekend out of it.
Nice. Good stuff. Yeah, I remember those days. I was about an hour away there in Columbus and Tupelo, Mississippi about 15 years ago, covering a lot of those things that you're talking about right now. This Alabama football team, I don't think you're going to take offense to this, Gary, but there's talk out there that they're ruining college football. They're boring. This excellence is just too much for everyone else. Do you guys hear that down there?
A lot, and certainly I'm not offended by it. I think it's a great compliment. I think it's a testament to what Saban has built, that there is Bama fatigue. I do think it's real, Mark, and I think if you're not an Alabama fan, you know, that's probably a normal feeling, is that you want to see Alabama get beaten. You'd love to see a year when the Tide doesn't make it into the college football playoff. And I think a lot of this expansion talk is fueled by Alabama, particularly last year. Mark, as you know, they didn't even play in the SEC championship game, and they still got into the playoff, and then they won the championship. So I think there is some pushback to Alabama. But what Nick Saban is doing, it is unprecedented. He's going for a 6th national championship here in the last 10 years at Alabama, his 7th overall, and quite frankly, they're the favorites to get it done. Now, you still have to go out and play, and they're going to be tested, but I think they're the favorite. They crank up practice this afternoon for bowl preparation, and Nick Saban will meet with reporters on Monday. So, yeah, it's something that we hear often, but as Nick Saban would probably tell you if he were, you know, just talking with you off the record, if you don't like it, do something about it. And that's the test for these other programs, is everybody starts out 0-0, as you know, Mark, and if they lose too many games, they won't get into the playoff. The problem is beating this team is very, very difficult.
Yeah, and so if you're a fan of Arizona State or Kansas State or Purdue, or someone who doesn't have aspirations of getting to a college football playoff, I don't know that it maybe in terms of just let's spread it around and let's see some other teams win, there's some fatigue there. Where I think this really hits home, and I think I'm going to pinpoint one program in particular, and I think you'll understand the connection. There's only another handful of programs just below Alabama that their fan bases expect they're fatigued, because they're like, we're supposed to be that team. We're supposed to be. So I think the direct connection is right there with Auburn and LSU in the SEC West. Obviously, they have to deal with it on a yearly basis. But Ohio State, their fan base, and because they had Urban Meyer as of recent, their head coach, there's the expectation that we're supposed to win national championships, and they're kind of the direct national rival that has just missed those expectations. So there's a lot of heat on that program.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you make a great comparison. I know he's stepping down after the Rose Bowl, but if there's one coach that could be compared to Nick Saban in the current scheme of college football, it would be Urban Meyer. Nobody else is close. 3 national championships. I think he lost, 8 games total at Ohio State, Mark, something like that. And they didn't get in last year. Alabama beat them for that final spot last year. Ohio State didn't get in this year. And I do think that Ohio State not getting in the last 2 years from the Big Ten, the Pac-12 looking at the reality of, I don't know, if ever, under the current situation, they're going to get a team in. I think that's fueling all this talk about expansion for the playoff. And I said on my radio show this morning, Mark, and I don't think people in Tuscaloosa want to hear it, or the SEC doesn't want to hear it, but it's coming. It's coming sooner rather than later. I think it'll be in place, the expansion, prior to this current agreement with ESPN running out in 2026. I think that the The Big Ten, Jim Delaney now is getting on board. The Pac-12 wants it. The Big 12 wants it. I think the ACC's on the fence. I think the only conference that really will fight it will be the SEC. And as powerful as the SEC is, it's still just one conference. And as far as these conference championship games, I know the SEC makes a ton of money, but I think if you go forward with an 8-team playoff, the conference championship games have to go away. So I do think there'll be a fight, but I think ultimately this playoff will expand, and I do think it's fueled by the fact that there are five Power 5 conferences, obviously the Power 5, but I also don't think when this formula was put in place that the Power 5s ever worried about a non-Power 5 actually doing well enough to be in the conversation. And I do think what Central Florida has done, rolling off this 25-game, 26-game winning streak, whatever it is, beating Auburn last year in the Chick-fil-A Bowl, and now people worry that they might beat LSU in a bowl game this year, I think that has fueled this. So I think it's coming. But get back to your original point about Ohio State. I think Ohio State was the one team this year that just from an athletic standpoint, you could argue Clemson maybe too, but I think Ohio State has athletes and depth very similar to Alabama. They shouldn't have got blown out at Purdue. I understand that. But I'm with you. I think Ohio State is the number 2 program, even ahead of Clemson. I would put Ohio State there in terms of duplicating what Alabama has, in terms of the system, in terms of the depth, in terms of the recruiting, in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the way Urban Meyer has run that program. And the fact that they're not in the playoff for 2 straight years now, I think has a lot to do with this talk about expansion. I think it's coming.